A desert wasteland, roaming bandits, warlords in uneasy alliances. You may think I'm describing the world of Mad Max, but no, I'm talking about the ominous threats looming over West Africa and the Sahel, a region that has been plagued by terrorism, instability, and an endless loop of military coups. Over the last 50 years, West Africa has been one of the most coup-prone regions on Earth. So why is West Africa and the Sahel trapped in this cycle? And what does it mean for the African continent and for the world? Welcome to The Real Politic, where we examine unfolding geopolitical crises, look beyond the headlines, and ask where they're really heading. If that's your thing, consider subscribing. By the end of the video, you'll have insight on the history of military rule in the region, the reversal of democratic gains, how this could all end up looking like Mad Max, and why military governments are not the answer. Broadcast commencing in. On October 1st, 1960, Nigeria gained independence from the British. A day of liberation, a new path of self-determination, unity, and shared prosperity. The future looked bright. Independent Nigeria fought for decolonization and black liberation across the world, a diverse and growing economy built on textiles, agriculture, and crop exports. But democracy and unity did not last long. By 1966, a group of soldiers took control of the government. This was the beginning of a cycle of instability. The country would go on to face military coups in 1975, 1983, 1985, and 1993, before finally establishing a stable democracy in 1999. What happened in Nigeria is illustrative of a pattern across the region. Ghana suffered from military coups in 1966, 1972, 1978, 1979. Benin, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Mauritania. Across the region, military governments were common. Real democracy became the exception, not the norm. This is not just history, however. Military coups and governance are still very much part of the fabric of West Africa and the Sahel. But for a brief period, it looked like everything could be different. The 1990s brought with it a wave of optimism that increasingly seems misplaced. The fall of the Berlin Wall and collapse of the Soviet Union were consequences of the end of the bipolar world, the end of history. Liberal democracy had won, a final victory over tyranny, and proof that all of the really big questions had been settled. It was no different in West Africa and the Sahel, once a battleground for proxy interests driven by both the Western and Eastern blocs. With the end of the Cold War, there was no more need for franchises of the global ideological conflict. From the 1980s through the 1990s, West Africa and the Sahel saw a wave of democratization. Countries like Senegal, Ghana, and Benin made successful and sustained transitions to democracy. Still, we should be clear, regionally, this was an uneven and often incomplete process. True representative democracies did not emerge overnight. But the trends were clear. Forms of multi-party democracy were slowly being institutionalized across the region. By 2001, the regional bloc, the Economic Community of West African States, adopted new protocols enshrining constitutional democratic transitions and outlining sanctions for military coups. But unfortunately, this wave of democratization would not last. Before 1999, Nigeria briefly flirted with democracy in 1979. In the same year, George Miller's iconic dystopian film was released, Mad Max. It started as a story focused on a dangerous biker gang in a grounded, post-collapse, lawless Australia. But as sequels came out, it devolved into desert wastelands, thunderdomes, warlords, and chromed-up mutants.
What a day! What a lovely day!
In Mad Max Fury Road, Immortan Joe leads an army of radicalized warboys, controlling access to water and dominating the wasteland with the help of allied warlords. a broken state built on the ashes of the past and the religious fervor of misled youth. Mad Max paints an eerie picture of what happens when society breaks down and how violent forces step in to fill the gaps that governments can't. A dark mirror to what we could see unfold in West Africa and the Sahel. Terrorist groups like Boko Haram started off similarly, an extremist biker gang clashing with the Nigerian police. Today, Boko Haram, its offshoots, and Islamic State-affiliated terror groups sow chaos across the Sahel, aiming to establish a zone of instability from the Sahara to the Gulf of Guinea. Already, West Africa and the Sahel account for almost 20% of global terrorist attacks and over 50% of terrorism-related deaths worldwide. The region has become the deadliest global hotspot for terrorism. In the long term, the vision of these terrorist groups cleaves terrifyingly close to the world of Mad Max. Ultimately, governments of West Africa and the Sahel have struggled to contain these threats. You might think that military governments could be more effective in countering terrorists. Apparently, the soldiers agree. In late 2025, an attempted military coup was foiled in Benin Republic, weeks after a successful one in Guinea-Bissau. And that's just 2025. Since 2020, successful military coups took place in Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Niger, dismantling democratic progress and political engagement for the sake of national security, tackling corruption, or overthrowing neocolonialism. In September 2023, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger established the Alliance of Sahelian States, withdrawing from the regional bloc, ECOWAS. They claimed that ECOWAS was more focused on serving imperial interests than helping the people of West Africa and the Sahel. The military governments of the AES portrayed themselves as a new path forward, but the path may not have been as certain as it initially seemed. While the military takeovers were condemned by ECOWAS, the African Union, and most international institutions, the strong men in uniform were praised in some sectors for throwing off the shackles of imperialism. Narratives emerged of a different West Africa, standing up to its former colonial masters, forging a new future. But it was no surprise that the return of military governments in the region coincided with the rise of new tensions along old fault lines. Western Bloc versus Eastern Bloc. The Cold War Part 2. As global powers once more vie for influence, military rulers are courted, armed, and legitimized. And while Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have taken positive steps to reinforce their sovereignty, expelling foreign troops, liberating their finances, and reclaiming national resources, they have failed to address, and in some cases have accelerated, terrorism and insecurity through militarized governance and weakened civilian oversight. Today, the three countries are arguably the most terrorism affected in the Sahel. Insurgents control up to half of Burkina Faso, targeting both soldiers and communities. In Niger, Islamic State affiliates have carried out devastating attacks in the country's western territories. And Mali may be worst of all. For large parts of 2025, the capital, Bamako, has been effectively encircled and isolated by terrorists. Bamako continues to face extreme shortages of fuel and other essential supplies as terrorists carry out blockades of key transit routes. Mali faces a credible risk of state fragmentation with potentially profound regional and global implications for the proliferation of terrorism, arms smuggling, human trafficking, and migration. The UN warns that there is a risk of disastrous domino effect across the entire region. A victory for the terrorists in Mali could be the first step in transforming the region into a Mad Max type scenario. At first glance, the world of Mad Max and the reality of West Africa and the Sahel hardly seem related, but the parallels are becoming easier to see. As climate change accelerates desertification, warlords, terrorists, and roaming bandits have emerged, driven by a combination of opportunism, desire for power, and religious extremism. West Africa and the Sahel appear to have left its history of military rule behind, opting for a democratic future. But the reversal of these gains in recent years threatens to plunge the region into chaos. The men in uniform are not a new solution. They are an old problem. But the evident challenges of these military governments may not be enough to dissuade ambitious soldiers from attempting to seize power. The successful coup in Guinea-Bissau and failed attempt in Benin demonstrate that seeds have been planted, and the idea is spreading through the region like contagion. Weak democracies, corruption, underdevelopment, public disaffection, and superpower-driven proxy interests have made West Africa and the Sahel especially prone to military coups, in turn, potentially resulting in a new base for global terrorist operations, carved out of ungoverned spaces and collapsed authority. Blood and fire, a Mad Max scenario.
My world is fire and blood.
But what do you think? Are renewed tensions between global powers fueling military coups and instability in West Africa and the Sahel? And are military governments exacerbating regional insecurity? If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more videos on power, collapse, war, and the systems behind them.